Hey, welcome back to Holistic Moms. I am so excited to bring you this guest today. I met this amazing man. Yes, man. We have our second male guest at a business meeting and then found out he goes to my church. And so we really connected, and I can't wait to introduce you to him. So Fred Bays is a passionate communicator who helps leaders unlock their God-given strengths so you can produce the results you want relationally and professionally. Fred planted a church that he led for 15 years before stepping away due to his cancer treatment in 2012. He is a serial entrepreneur who owns multiple businesses, is a speaker, published author, and consultant. And we talk today about the wilderness. Are you in the wilderness? Do you even know? Do you know what it looks like? Do you know how to get out? Do you know what to do when you're in the wilderness? I think these are all very important questions to ask yourself, and we're going to talk all about it. We go in depth in this conversation. And the reason I could not wait to have Fred on, and the reason he's on this episode during my huge secret sale for the Bold Blueprint is because of this message of taking courage to get out of the wilderness, or even crazy, taking courage to step into a wilderness. And then the courage that you intentionally take when you're in the wilderness. Because mama, we were made to do hard things. God made us with courage and tenacity and audacity and boldness and bravery. He did not make us to be timid and shy and isolated and confused and stuck and survival. He didn't want those things for us. He doesn't want those things for us. We talk about the Israelites and how God didn't want that for them. He actually brought them to the wilderness to teach them about Him. What is God teaching you where you are? And what courage does He want you to take? Is it to step into the Bold Blueprint? Is it to click on the secret sale link and to get in the program while it's an amazing price to have long-lasting generational change on your entire family, not just for you. This is for your legacy. This is going to teach you how to walk through a wilderness, how to get to the promised land, how to live in the promised land, how to live with your God-given purpose, how to find out your identity, how to live intentionally and to be a steward of this one time in this world that we have, to be a steward of your time, to be a steward of your resources, to be a steward of your children, to be a steward of your money, to be a steward of your body. This is what we talk about in the Bold Blueprint. We talk about being a steward. And what we do practically is we replace your stress with strategy. We replace your exhaustion with peace. We replace your shame and your guilt for a bold, spirit-lived purpose. We do this step by step. I hold your hand the whole way. I lead you practically and realistically with achievable steps that you can do in your busy, full life. And we learn that it all comes back to our thoughts. And so you can do this. You can change any thought. You can learn. We talk about this with Fred too, how it all comes back to our thoughts. And this helped change his life. He was able to change his brain, and you can do the same. And I did the same. It is possible. And when you do that, you change your life, and then you can change your kids' lives and their futures. And the future self is going to thank you, and your future family, and like I said, generations to come are going to thank you. They're going to live in a promised land and know how to get there because of you. And so, friend, take that step right now, that bold step, and click on the secret sale. Go to www.theshanwright.com/secret sale. All you have to do is put in your email and you will unlock the secret sale. Then you get to take the bold step and input that sales code into the ordering page, and you are in. You are in to the best next amazing, courageous step for your life, for your holistic life. We're going to touch every part of you. Every area of your life is going to be changed for the better. A current student says this: before the program, my life felt chaotic, my shoulders were heavy, and my mind was spinning constantly. Since starting the program, and mind you, she's just barely in, My life feels more organized and intentional. What I love the most is that the program is centered on God. I love how personalized the program is and the weekly prayers that Shan sends. The coursework is very doable for this busy mom of 4. The homework is impactful without taking up too much time. It's easy and practical. There's so much good information in the videos. I love that I can watch or listen to them anywhere. Because I'm still early in the program, I feel like I've only cracked the surface. However, I'm very excited about the changes I feel are already taking place in my life because of it. It's about making good habits for life, and this program helps me do that. Other programs I've tried failed because they did not set me up for the long term. I think that's the difference between this program and others. Okay, there you go. It's spelled out for you. You need to take this step of courage and join us in the bold blueprint right now. I can't wait to see you inside, and your future self will thank you. Let's go into this amazing conversation with Fred. Hey mama, are you overwhelmed by your full, blessed life? Do you feel stuck in the messy, mundane middle? Then I'm so glad you're here to take a breath. Hey, I'm Shan Wright, RN, holistic wellness coach, and a mom to 4 that went from perfectionism, control, and lots of anxiety to intentionally living through simple solutions and so much peace. If you are done with the stressed out life, hot mess express type of motherhood, then heat up that coffee again and let's live holistically well in the middle. Let's go. All right, guys, I'm so excited to welcome another male voice onto the show. I met Fred through a business networking platform and learned very quickly that he goes to my church. So there's just so many things I love about Fred, and I'm super excited to introduce you guys to him. So Fred, thank you for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me on, Shan. I'm really excited.
Okay, so please share with us just a little bit about your family and what you do, because you've done a lot of things in your life.
I have. So I am originally from Ohio, so I'm a Buckeye. And I moved out here in '88 to go to college and played football at Anderson University. And I've been out here ever since. Met my wife there. She's also from Ohio, actually. And so we've been married for over 30 years. And she's a school counselor at elementary school. And I have 3 grown children, a daughter that's married, and she has 2 of our grandchildren. And then I have a son who's married and has a grandson. And then my youngest is graduating from Indiana Wesleyan, played football there, and graduates in 2 months and is getting married also. So we're empty nesters. And so that's a little bit about our family.
Tell me what you do. All the things that you do.
So what I do is I help people find God
and
become all that he made him to be. That's what I do with my life.
Yes.
And it's taken a lot of different forms.
Mm-hmm.
I was a youth pastor for 10 years, and then I planted a church in Fishers that I led for about 13 years. Then I went through cancer and battled with depression because of that. Had to step away. That was tough. Ended up landing in teaching, taught elementary for 7 years. I taught 5th grade, and then I taught STEM. Also. And then also because of needing more income, I started a side business, a painting business, and that took off. In the last 5 years, I have owned and run the painting business. And then that got me into business coaching because people started asking, how'd you do it? And so now I am the director of incubation and entrepreneurship at Flagship. And so it's all about helping small business owners develop their business. And we have a loan program we do. And so I developed coaching and conferencing. And then I met you through Alignable, which is really something I do volunteer. And that's a platform to help small business owners connect. And it's both virtual and in person. And so I stumbled into becoming the ambassador of the Indianapolis region and work with a guy, Joe Gervais. It's on the South Side. And we've only been doing it for about 4 or 5 months, and it has just taken off. And it's just been a really great thing, building a community for small business owners. So, yeah.
Yes.
I've coached high school football usually. Yes.
Well, I love that. I love how you know your purpose and your mission in life, but then it's taken on all these different forms because of, health and
Yep.
because of just family situations and financial situations but you never lose sight of what God made you to do.
Yeah, and I would say, even though I always knew what I was supposed to do, I didn't do a very good job until later in life, like my 40s and 50s, to understand that it could look different each time and not struggle with that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I definitely think a lot of us, well, I am in my 40s and I'm learning that. But I think a lot of us, when we're in our young adult and we are just getting going in our career, we have our mindset on what we think we're supposed to do or what we even want to do. I want to be a nurse. This is actually my story. I wanted to be a nurse. I actually wanted to be a mom, but I knew that nursing was like flexible. So I went into nursing. And then when it came to the time where I could put it on the back burner and be a stay-at-home mom, I was like, but wait, I love when people say, what do you do? And I'm a nurse and I'm like so confident in that. And I know how to do it. And I know how to help people and
Mhm.
care for them. And I won't be able to say that anymore. And then God helped me see through a year of identity work that my identity is I have a heart to care for people, but it doesn't have to look like in the hospital, 12-hour shifts and draining all my energy so I can't care for my kids. It just
Mhm.
looks different.
Yes. That is a hard one that a lot of people don't do the work to separate their identity from what they do.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and I didn't until I had to with my health situation. I'd
Yeah.
always been a pastor. I didn't know how to not be a pastor. So yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. And I would say the reason that I knew right away that I really liked you is when you were at our alignable meeting and you still are you're still helping people, leading them to God, even in a more, a secular environment. It's not a Christian environment.
Nope.
It's just a bunch of business owners coming together, but you can't take that hat off because that's your identity. That's who you are. And so you share amazing Bible stories in a very generic way. Like, here's a group of people. They were called the Israelites and da 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 da. And it's like, oh my gosh, he's sharing straight from Joshua, but like they don't need to know that. It's just like there's so much message there that you can lead people in a biblical way, like lead them to God without saying it. And it's just because again, it's who you are. So I love that.
Well, truth is truth, and people resonate with it when they hear it,
Hmm.
and then God helps them to connect the dots. So yeah,
Yeah.
I love doing it out in the world
Yeah.
because I'm an evangelist at heart.
Well, I want to talk a little bit about just your testimony. Take us back just a little bit. You knew you wanted to be a youth pastor or go into ministry of some sort. You knew your identity was to help people and lead them to God. So put another light on that, shed more light onto how it led you to how God really led you to where you are today.
Yeah, I all my kids are in their 20s, and it's an awesome stage, and I'm getting to process with them about their life and careers and different decisions and all that. And when I was in my 20s, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I didn't know what I was good at. I just wanted to have fun, and I loved God. That was really the biggest learning curve stage of I didn't know anything about leadership. So I just read a lot about leadership, and I made so many mistakes, both, as a youth pastor and also early married. And I mean, just, and as a dad. And I mean, so early on, there's just such a growth learning curve, and it's an experimentation kind of stage. I feel like,
Hmm.
my middle son, I've had 3 different times now where I have been able to process with him when he's just trying to figure out next step with a job, and he's trying to figure out what's a good fit and all this, and it's fun to have the conversation with him. But when you're in your 20s, it's like I gotta figure this out. But now as I'm older, I'm like, oh no, it's just enjoy the journey,
Yeah.
of it.
Yeah.
So that's probably the biggest thing I would say from my 20s, during that stage of life. Then at 29, I felt God put a call in my life to reach the northeast side of Indy for him. And so really felt like that was through planting a church. There were quite a few ways he confirmed that to me and my wife. And we stepped out and planted it and from scratch. And we did have support from the church that I was pastoring, but it wasn't an evangelistic church. And so we didn't really take, a big group of people from there. We just wanted to grow it by reaching people that didn't know God. And so that was the 30s was, it was an exciting time. Most of my deepest friendships are from that, even though I still don't pastor that church. I call them lifers, people that for 25 years have been like just lifetime friends and like family. And many of them, we had the privilege of leading to Christ and baptizing them. And so that was just a great season. Also lots of challenges and hits and different things along with that. Thought I was going to do that my whole life.
Yeah.
And then things took a turn and went in a completely different direction that I wasn't thinking.
Yeah. Do you want to share
Sure.
about that? Yeah. Because I think it's a big wilderness season.
Yes.
Which we're going to talk about in a second.
Yes. That was a huge wilderness experience for me. I had zero symptoms, complete God thing, how I was cut. I could tell you 5 different things that happened within 1 week that led to finding out that I had the cancer. Stage 4 when I found out.
Wow.
It was total God thing. When I found out, it was, it was a punch in the gut because I was told immediately it had a 20% chance to live. But you hear of other people having that happen to them, and there's not a family member that's not touched by cancer, in some way. But for you to get the call and someone tell you that, it's like, wow. And then to find out that it was worse after they removed it from my knee, that it was actually in my lymph nodes and had to have another surgery, then it got more serious, and fortunately they were able to get it all out with the surgeries, but the treatments, they didn't really have very good treatments back then.
That was yesterday, but
2012. So, 13 years ago. And medicine has progressed a lot. But most of the drugs back then, they just killed every cell in your body. They didn't target it like they do now.
Yeah. And I was a cancer nurse back then as well.
Okay.
So I know.
Yeah. And so they don't even use the drug that they had me take anymore. In fact, every time I go back for my annual checkup, my oncologist apologizes that they made me take it.
Oh, wow.
They feel so bad. It was a potent drug. And I was the first person in the state of Indiana to take that form of the drug, actually.
Wow.
It had a list of about 12 different symptoms that you could experience. And I ended up having every single one to the extreme, including severe depression, suicidal, panic attacks, insomnia, didn't sleep for 2 weeks straight once. It was just going insane. I experienced things that I'd never experienced in my life. I was an athlete growing up, and so I was always able to overcome things. And I was always an optimist too. So
I had a strong mind.
So I didn't know how to do that. I just did it naturally. Well, what happened was the chemical messed with my brain, and I ended up just getting to a place where I was not myself. They told me that the number one thing I would feel and experience was fear and doom because my body was being attacked. And so it's hard to describe to people what fear and doom feels like to live your life like that.
Yeah.
It was hell.
Yeah.
Well, I just would not wish it on my worst enemy. I couldn't pull out of it, and I had negative ruminating thoughts, and I just had never experienced anything like that. And I had to relearn how to think. And so even though I wouldn't want to go through it again, and I wouldn't wish it on anybody, I'm grateful and thankful because I learned how to rebuild my mindset,
Mm-hmm.
and God helped me to understand that so that I can help other people see how to do that.
Wow. We talk so much on this podcast about rewiring your brain. It's actually part of my Bold Blueprint program. We go through it step by step because I've done that to myself through, postpartum anxiety and I learned how to do it. But I feel like you probably have you just like put the exclamation point on it. You're like, this is possible. I was able to do this. God helped me do this. And I rewrote all the thinking part of my brain into positivity, right? Because it was from fear and doom, and you changed it to hope and positivity, and you took intention with your thoughts. You had to change them, right?
Yeah. And first of all, hearing that you've been through, the postpartum and having to work through that. Before my cancer, I couldn't really relate, or I couldn't have a sensitivity to it. So that's
Mm-hmm.
one thing I'm thankful for, that I can connect with somebody that's just, struggling in a tough place. But I can also say to them, you don't have to stay there.
Yeah.
And I think until you go through that, you don't know how to help say that to somebody, because it feels a little bit like, oh, what do I say? But when you've been to dark places and rough places, and you can say, I get it, man. I get it. Oh, man, I'm so sorry. But man, I'm telling you, you don't have to stay there. There's an empowerment. Like the day I realized that when you think you can't change, that you actually still can, that was like so empowering, because
Yeah.
I thought I couldn't.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That was an intense wilderness season.
Yeah.
And you shared the wilderness principle. And I have heard this message in a lot of different ways. You broke it down so simply and practically. So I would love for you to share, because, by the way, wilderness season, it looks different for everyone. For you, it was cancer and it was all of this. For maybe the mom listening, you just feel stressed out. You feel burnt out. You feel like, gosh, I got to wake up and do all this mundane stuff again. I got to feed and bathe and dress people. And is this doing anything? And that could be your wilderness. So it can look differently. But what do we do when we're in the wilderness season? And then how do we get out of it? Just share with us the principle.
So I think the first thing is the most important, the mindset you have going into it. If you're going into it saying, why me? How can I get out of this? We may get out, but we're going to go right back in.
Mm-hmm.
Or we may stay stuck for a long time. And so for me, it's about recognizing that the only reason God allows us to go into the wilderness, whether it's our fault, whether it's some other circumstance that happened to us, whether it's, God trying to get a hold of us, whatever the reason is, I would say 90% on us from my perspective.
Mm-hmm.
But whatever the reason is, if I can go into it realizing that the only reason God lets us go through pain, which is what wilderness is to prepare us for what's next, for the next promised land that he has for us. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
If we can have that mindset going into it, then God is a good dad that is helping me through this pain and wants to teach me some things, show me some things about myself, help me get ready for what's next. But if I can't get there, then the wilderness is, I'll just wander way longer than I need to. And we get to choose how long we're in there.
Yeah, like 40 years when it should have taken them 11 days.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then I love the verse where in Deuteronomy, and God tells Moses, haven't y'all dwelt long enough? Haven't you stayed and wandered long enough? Are you ready? Are you ready to go take the promised land? You simply have to turn and go this way. It's like he tells you which way to go, but sometimes we want to stay there. We don't want that, do the effort, the hard step to get out, take courage. We don't want to take courage because courage is scary and we're trapped in fear. And sometimes I think fear is can be comforting and like, well, I know this, I'm familiar with this. All these, you tend to start to always hear those voices in your head and you're like, That makes sense to me. You know, getting out of your comfort zone is courage and it's hard. And so we like to stay
Mhm.
sometimes in the wilderness.
Sure. The Israelites that wandered for 40 years, they didn't want to change.
Mm-hmm.
And the best way not get stuck in the wilderness is to listen to how you're talking. What you're saying reveals what you're thinking.
Exactly.
If I'm making excuses, if I'm blaming,
Mm-hmm.
if I'm throwing pity parties, um, then I'm not in a position in my mind to be open and willing to let God grow me or change me, and I'm gonna stay stuck. And so that's part of what when I went through kind of the transformation of learning how to rebuild my mind, I studied the science behind how the brain works a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And then I taught STEM, and so I taught computer programming, and so I was always fascinated with the science behind things. And as I started learning all these things and how the neural paths go, and it's all begins with thought, and then the thought creates synaptic connections or pathways, in our brain, and then that causes chemical reaction to be released, which causes feelings, and then
Mm-hmm.
our body just does what we feel. And so then we say, man, I don't know why I did that. And it's because we have sometimes some faulty belief systems that really are unconscious.
Mm-hmm.
90% of our life is run by unconscious mind. And but we never get to that because we focus on the behavior management rather than, wait, what was the thinking that caused that? And
Yeah.
what program do I need to reprogram in my brain and replace it with truth instead of faulty lies or scarcity thoughts or fear, those kinds of things.
Exactly. This is what this is why I call this the number one life-changing hack, because you can literally change any part of your life by going back to your thoughts and your belief system and saying that's a false agreement that I made when I was
Exactly.
8
Yeah.
and it needs to go. Now that
Yeah.
I'm 35 or 40 and whatever age and I'm seeing how it's playing out, that started as a kid. Well, it's okay today. Change it. Change it today. It's
Yeah.
okay. It has been there. And a lot of it does develop in our childhood and our learning and experimenting years. It develops, but we can always change it. We don't have to It's so interesting when people say, this is just the way I am. I'm just this kind of person. And I'm like, no, you're not. God didn't make that. He makes good things. So nope, that was wrong. So I think that's such a good point, is like we can always change. Share with us, you gave 3 points before on how to get out of the wilderness. Okay, we want to make the change. We've decided. How do we get out of the wilderness and then go into the promised land?
I call it the 3 L's. Just, what do I need to learn? And the whole reason God brought the Israelites into the wilderness out of slavery was to teach them about himself and his goodness. And like, he did all these miracles, all this provision for them. And he wanted time with them. He wanted to show them, that he loves them, and how powerful he is, and how he wants to bless them. And so, even though wilderness times are painful, lose a job, broken relationship, a setback, whatever it is, a health issue, it's painful. But if we can realize that God wants to teach us something about that, he's got us,
Mm-hmm.
if we can just believe that, man, we can learn a lot faster, and it can be a lot less painful.
Yeah.
And we can get to a different side a lot quicker. And so there's just that learning piece. And then the second L is just, what do I need to listen to?
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and pain is a great teacher.
Yeah.
And if we don't listen to pain, then we're going to go right back into the wilderness and do it again. And all of us have repeat wilderness things that we
Yeah.
do, and until we learn to listen, and whether listening is just listening to somebody that is trying to speak truth into our life, or whatever that listening is of how God tries to speak to us, just get into a place where I quit making excuses
Yeah.
and I just
I
listen. you know?
Yeah, I went through postpartum anxiety. It wasn't until the third time that I learned to listen and even named it. Before I was naming it, other things like even blaming
Yep.
excuses, blaming
Yep.
people, covering it up with perfectionism and all sorts of things, control. And then it wasn't until the third time that I listened to God. And you know what it was? He drew all these feelings out of me. And it was for the first time I listened to those feelings. I was like, what is this feeling telling me? I'm crying when I'm hearing someone talk about their postpartum anxiety. I think that might mean I have this. Like I related so much to what she was saying. And it was like, oh my gosh. And then the fourth time that I went through it, I knew it was like I was prepared. I was like, okay, God gave me things to do and how to get through this wilderness. And I'm going to do it with hope this time because I know I'm going to get to the promised land. It just takes some intentionality. It takes some courage. It takes relying on him. And it was so different the fourth time.
And, if you look at Jesus's life, he started his ministry going into the wilderness,
Mm-hmm.
and he had some testings, and he listened to God, and he hung on to his truth and used that, his word, as the counter on things. And he wasn't trying to find his identity in stuff. And so that last L is to let go.
Mm-hmm.
What do you need to let go of? And
Mm-hmm.
a lot of times it's our pride,
Mm-hmm.
how we worry about what people think of us, or what we want to become, or whatever. So what is it I need to let go of? And it may be the excuses I make. It may be the pity parties I like to throw on myself. I used to throw really good ones. Not that I don't ever, but they're a lot shorter, and I catch myself a lot quicker, in it.
Mm-hmm.
I like to say that in the wilderness experience, there's a seed of success in there if you go looking for it.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're not looking for it, you won't find it.
Yeah.
You find what you want,
Mm-hmm.
And so if I want to complain and make excuses and grumble like the grumbling Israelites, that's what I'll get.
Yeah.
And you just get more of what you want. That's what God does. I think sometimes God uses wilderness experiences to get us to let go of things that he has something better for us.
Yeah.
If we could get to the place where we go into the wilderness on our own, I think that's the best place we can get to, because it's self leadership. If you look at Jesus's life, he went to the wilderness by himself a lot, out to the mountainside all the time, early in the morning by himself, and they had to go find him. What was he doing?
Solitude and silence.
He was getting away, listening. He was probably hammering some things out sometimes with God,
Mm-hmm.
but then he was at a good place to handle what was next.
Yeah.
Every time, and so the maturity of getting to the place where I intentionally go into the wilderness on a regular basis to let God teach me and stuff, I think that causes us to not fall into the wilderness as much. Does that make
Oh yeah,
sense?
because
That
that's laying
concept?
down your pride,
Like,
and pride comes before the fall.
like you're talking about the fourth time you were ready.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, I can go into that. I'm not afraid of the wilderness.
Yeah.
Okay, what do you want to teach me? What do I need to learn? What do I need to grow? Okay,
And that
I
doesn't mean it
go.
wasn't hard. It was
Right.
still hard.
Sure.
It just, I knew I was exactly that. I was learning so much. I was being pruned. I knew I was getting ready for something. I knew there was going to be a promised land on the other side that was going to be better than what I was going through. It was like, not only, it was 2020. So not only was I knew I was experiencing something that this wilderness I've been through before, but now we have the whole world going through anxiety too. Then we have a death in my family, my sister. And then we have other illness, my mom having cancer. Like it was so many things at once. So it was like, not only was it the same type of wilderness, but it was also worse, but also I was more prepared and ready. And I coming into it with a mind of, God, teach me, here I am, like use me, like prune me, like I know this is going to be better. So it's all back to that mindset.
Yeah. I went through probably a 16-month wilderness this last year with my business, because the market was a tough market
Mm.
for the painting industry. just slowed down, and it was just really difficult. And I went into it believing, if I can just get through this, if we can get through this, we're going to be in a good position. And I kept telling myself that each month, because it was hard. It was difficult. I'd talk to my team and say, hey, if you need to do something else, I understand. And it wasn't easy. And, financially it was tough. And I'm very thankful that the last couple months we've kind of moved out of it. But
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that I could have, I'd have just given up,
Yeah.
Earlier in life with that. But like you said, it's hard. But when you can find meaning in hard,
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
you know,
exactly. Someone asked you this when you were sharing this before in the meeting. Someone asked you, what are some indicators that you're headed into a wilderness season? And I think that would be good for you to share, because sometimes I think that my listeners don't, and I didn't either. That's because I only know this because this is where I was. Don't realize they're in survival mode. They don't realize they're burnt out. I had no idea I was burnt out. I was like Googling what's burnt out look like. Like you don't know that you're in it when
yeah.
you're in it sometimes, but you gave some good indicators that can tell us that we're in it. What are they?
So, every car has gauges.
Yeah.
They're there to indicate, hey, something, you're running
Yeah.
out of gas, your oil's low, you're going to get overheated, right? Emotionally, when we're not regulated,
Mm-hmm.
those are indicators. I'm mad, I'm hurt, I'm bitter.
Yeah.
Any kind of emotional thing is a major indicator that, man, if I don't look at this, I'm headed into the wilderness right now. So emotional is a big one. And I think another one is how we talk, like we've kind
Mm-hmm.
of talked about. Am I
Mm-hmm.
making excuses a lot? Am I blaming? Am I pessimistic? Am I
Yeah.
critical? Am I negative? Am I cynical? Just the way I'm thinking and talking.
Mm-hmm.
And I think another indicator, I don't know if I mentioned this one, but I think another indicator is if there's conflict in relationships, and I keep saying that they're the problem.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that I mentioned that, but if there's consistent conflict in a relationship, it's an indicator that something's off.
Yeah.
And not that it's all you, but is there something I need to look at?
Exactly.
And if your spouse keeps telling you something and you're not listening, you're eventually headed to the wilderness
Mm-hmm.
in
Yeah.
the
Because
relationship.
there's a pride issue there.
Yeah.
If you can come to a relationship and say there's some conflict, I'm going to humble myself and say, what am I doing in this situation, this conflict? Then you can usually solve it. But if it's constant and you're not handling it, then your pride just keeps building, and then you go into the wilderness. Like, yeah.
And if you think about it, we have individual personal wildernesses. Then we have relational wildernesses.
Mm-hmm.
Like you can go to the wilderness in your marriage.
Yeah.
You can go to the wilderness with your kids, with the way you're relating. I remember there was a time when my middle child, which he was very strong personality like me, and I didn't want him to win. And I would, it didn't go well sometimes when he was like elementary and middle school. And I remember my wife saying, if you don't quit fighting with him, you're not going to have a relationship with him when he's older. I'm thankful I listened to that one. And
Yeah.
I have a great relationship with him now as a 28-year-old adult male. And I thank her for helping me see that, in that. Or then you can have a family in a wilderness, an entire family. I mean, the studies show that when one person in a family goes through a major like medical issue, everybody is affected significantly in it.
Oh, yeah.
Or you have a setback with your job, or you have a move, all of those triggers, a whole family can get into a wilderness, time. An organization, a whole church, a whole business can be in that. A nation. I mean, the Israelites, they were a nation.
Mm-hmm.
So it can happen on multiple levels in your
Mm-hmm.
life. And you could even be in a job where like it's not a great environment, and it can put you in the wilderness, and
Yeah.
you can try to push through it, but it can just suck the life out of you.
Yeah. I think one of the other indicators that you said, which kind of points to that, is you said stuck. You just feel stuck in
Yeah.
whatever, life scenario.
Yeah.
And so you're in a wilderness, but what do you do to get out of it? You take a step of courage. They were wandering in the wilderness for 40 years, and God said, be bold and courageous. Stop being like this. Just take your step of courage into the promised land. I already gave it to you. Just go take it.
Yeah, that's my favorite scripture. It's actually Joshua 1:9 and 3, verse 3. Don't be afraid or discouraged. Lord your God is with you wherever you go. And
Yeah.
then I've already given you the land, he said to him. So
Yeah.
just go take possession of it. Now, we don't have to earn it, but we do have to take possession of it.
Mm-hmm.
And if we're too afraid to do it, we'll miss. And they had every chance to go into the promised land. And they said, no, 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 those people are too big. We can't do this. They're going to kill us. Made all these reasons. And so they didn't experience it. And they were literally like steps away from, this promised land experience that they'd always talked about and dreamed about their whole life. Well, the next generation comes up and they saw how their parents lived and they're like, well, we're not going to be like that. And they're like, we're going in, we're going to trust God. And within a week, they're taking a whole city and then another city and another city. And it's like,
Yeah,
it's new territory for God in your life. And like you said, all it is choosing to not stay stuck and to take the next step. What's the next step?
Yeah. I remember, being in my wilderness and I was crying out to God, can you help me? Like, I feel like I'm doing this all alone. I feel like I'm doing everything in this family, which, exaggeration there. I feel like I'm doing everything and I'm handling everything and everything's on my back and my shoulders. And can you just help me? And he said no, by the way, because he's like, no. You're not supposed to do everything. But it was like, no, get out of your own way. Like, stop being stubborn and prideful and walk into the promised land that I have for you. Don't try to create your own promised land and try to manufacture and produce. I'm talking to the mom here, like all this busyness and activities and this needless distractions from actually the promised land and the purpose that God has for you. Don't stay where you are because this is what you think you're supposed to do. This is what your family, your kids are supposed to be on all these sports every night of the week. No, it's stressing you out. It's leading you in this place where you can't do the things that he has for you. I actually did a podcast episode this morning. It comes out tomorrow, actually. And it was stop doing all the good things that you think are good and focus on the God things. What are the God things that he has for you? Because that's the promised land. That's where you're going to have peace. That's where you're going to have joy. That's where you're going to have hope. That's where you're going to be able to really pour into your family. But when you're in this place that you have manufactured and you've put together and you're trying to put like a little bow on top and say, this is our perfect life, it's going to fall apart. It's all built on pride.
Yeah, I often say we don't have enough time to do everything that we think we need to do or want to do, but we have plenty of time to do everything that God wants us to do.
Exactly. Yeah, I
Yeah.
love that. Okay, I I could talk to you for another hour about this because this is my favorite topic. If
Well,
you
we'll
couldn't
have to do
tell.
another one. We could talk about the good soil principle. You haven't heard that one.
Okay, sure. Let's do it again. You can be the pastor of the pod and come back. Come back for sure. Can you tell us how people can get in touch with you?
Yeah, the primary way would be through the coaching that I do. It's called principledsuccesscoaching.com. And you can connect with me that way through email. And that's primarily with business, but I coach the whole person. So it's not just, the business you're doing, but it's also you as a leader, as an individual, as a spouse, as a parent. And I coach as many women as I do men, business
Yeah.
owners, honestly.
Yeah.
And so principled success coaching. And that's really what came out of my experience is I realized that the same principles I used to build my church, I used to build my painting business, and they were based on God's truth, and God's principles bring success in our life. And success in a way that has meaning and purpose and fulfillment in our life. So,
Amen.
yeah.
Okay.
And then I have my book that, is the story of everything I went through.
Oh, no, I didn't know that.
Yes, it's called Fred Talk by Fred Bass. It's on Amazon, and it's called Fred Talk: Inspiration and Truth from a Friend. Just how I went through cancer, depression, and career change all in the same year.
Wow. Okay. Well, we're going to have to get that book. I had no idea. Okay. Well, thank you. I'm going to put that in the show notes as well.
Awesome.
Thank you so much, Fred. It has been so fun. It's actually my honor. I'm so thankful that you decided to come on.
Hey, I'm proud of you. I'm excited about what you're doing, especially for moms, and to bring the value and the purpose for them. And that is unbelievable. I'll end on this last thing. Both of my sons have said to my wife numerous times that, Mom, the reason we're so grounded and so secure in who we are is because how you loved us.
No.
And they treat their wives really well because of that. And so, you have an incredible impact on your children, and then also the call that you have for all the other aspects of things that you do in your life. So thanks for what you're doing.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Hey, Wellness Warrior. I pray that blessed you. And if so, it would bless me big if you would write a 5-star review and subscribe on Apple Podcasts. Not only would this make me super happy, but it will allow for others to find this show too. Also, I love to chat over on Instagram, so make sure to take a screenshot, share to your Instagram stories, and tag me at @TheShanWright so I can see it and we can keep chatting and bring other moms to chat with us. Until we get to chat again, mama friend, may the Lord's face shine upon you and give you peace.